Good evening once again. It's Monday night. It's 8 o'clock and it's, as usual, time for the Monday Review Show. This is where we discuss all things referees and refereeing. If you'd like to make any comments or you'd like to ask a question, you're more than welcome to do so. There's a little thing down there on the bottom right-hand side of your screen for you to make a comment. And but at all times, of course, be respectful of the show and especially of my guest, who is a former Premier League referee, former FIFA referee, former head of the PGMOL, and the man who introduced goal line technology, which is absolutely fantastic. Keith Hackett. Good evening,
Hi.
Keith, and thanks very much for joining me once again.
Good evening.
We did discuss last week, we touched on it, but I would like to continue that discussion this week. And this is the whole issue about the abuse of match officials, not only referees, but assistant referees and fourth officials. And this is all highlighted, of course, in the Copa del Rey, another El Clasico, as they call it, between Real Madrid and Barcelona on the weekend, when the referee, whose name I wouldn't even attempt to pronounce, was objected to very, very strongly by the Real Madrid club. They said they didn't want him, they wanted him removed. And thankfully, the powers that be that look after refereeing in Spain said, not a chance, he's the guy. And if you don't like it, tough. And of course, now Real Madrid will be justified, if that's the right word, by saying we didn't want him and he shouldn't have been given. Because in the end, and it went to extra time, he gave 3 red cards, some to even substitutes. Even Rudiger, who played for, I think he played for Chelsea, got a red card for throwing an ice pack at the referee. I mean, you know, this kind of violence and disrespect for authority has to be stamped out. Otherwise, you're going to have chaos. You're going to have fans and team managers and clubs deciding which referee will do this game or that game, throwing things at referees, which can lead to exceptional violence. And I know, because I was at the butt end of that in South Africa, when managers run up and down the line, throwing their hands in the air. In other words, look, it's not me, it's the referee. And that can lead to violence. And I'll tell you a few stories about violence that I suffered later on in the program, if we have time. Do you think it's right that clubs should influence the appointment of referees?
Absolutely not. I can remember years ago, I think it was an Italian club, I'll not name it, influenced the head of referee and an appointment to one of this club's games. And he changed the referee. And that was investigated. And the consequence of that was that the actual manager of the referees, I think, was taken to court by it. So I think that the justification.
Sorry, kid, I just lost you there. He was taken to court by whom?
He was taken to the court by the police because they saw it as corruption.
Yeah.
So let's make it clear. If you're sat in the chair, for example, as Howard Webb sits in the PGMOL and he appoints referees, he's the head of refereeing, he appoints referees to the Premier League games. He might, at national level, have Mike Jones doing some of the appointing, aided by people like Kevin Friend, who's a coach. So, you know, the process is very clear. It has to be the match guy in charge of referees. In most countries, it's actually done through a referees committee.
Yeah.
And that committee structure was discussed when I was headed, if you like, the referee convention, the UEFA referee convention, which I helped to author. And one of the principles of that referee convention was to say, how is the referees committee in that country structured? And of course, it was to ensure that it was referees on that committee, former referees, that were independent of the competition. And I think that is why when we look at the PGMOL and the role of Howard Webb, even though there are board directors that represent the Football League, the Premier League and the FA, that he reports to, the responsibility of that appointment is entirely on his head. And you cannot have a competition or an executive of the competition or a club influencing which referee is going to be appointed to their game. It's an absolute no-no.
So Howard Webb makes the ultimate decision, does he, with the assistance of the other guys?
Yeah, I think Howard Webb, in terms of the Premier League, he will be the guy that actually sits down, as I used to do, and create, if you like, a draft initially. Then we'll examine that draft along a spreadsheet, looking at the performance of that referee in terms of where he sits in the table of performances. There's a sort of table, 1 to 20 at that particular time when I was in charge, and we would look at exposure to a club. So I think that system is probably, well, it'll have changed, but it's still at the basis of it. He is responsible for the referees, cannot be influenced by a team going to the Premier League and saying, we don't want this referee. In the same way, the Spanish FA, in fairness to them, were not influenced with Real Madrid's claims that they wanted this referee to change. That referee stayed on that particular game.
How would Howard Webb, and I don't want me to put pressure on him, but how would any head of referees react to a club phoning him up and saying, listen, we had trouble with this guy, it might have been 3 months. Would he say, okay, we'll keep him off, but he will be going back? Or would he say, listen, you're on to the wrong people, don't phone me, I make the appointment, you accept whom I send? Because in a way, that would be giving the clubs some leverage, even if they kept referee A off because he sent off one of their players or two players in a previous game, maybe 3 months ago, and was due to go back there. The way we used to do it in South Africa, we would look to make sure that the same referee was not refereeing either of the clubs in that particular game for at least 5 games. But if come the 6th game and he was due to go there, I would send him there.
Oh, I mean,
regardless of what the club said.
Yeah, I think that, again, I would like to think that there is a very clear amount of energy going into the appointment of match officials at the Premier League level. And I think that is important. I think it's recognised because Taylor and Oliver have had the most appointments in the Premier League season today. They're obviously, in the eyes of Howard, his best 2 referees. So he's selective with them and he uses them as often as possible. This weekend, we see a young referee who's coming through. I think he's already had a Premier game. Lewis Smith, he's appointed to a game this weekend. And a referee who impressed me last weekend, David Webb. I can't remember the game. It might have been I think it was one of the playoff games. And I think he did really well. And he's been also appointed to a Premier League game. Now, I think blooding them and giving them that opportunity is so important. Yeah. But I was the guy that made the appointments. I'm the guy that takes the stick if they don't perform well. That was my role. And I think that in a sense is Howard Webb's role. But having said that, I mean, let us look at one of the games this weekend where I believe that Peter Banks didn't have his best performance. He yellow carded a Manchester United player. There was no foul. There was absolutely no foul whatsoever. And he's yellow carded that individual. And of course, VAR cannot come in. And there's no rescinding of a yellow card or no appeal against the yellow card. Now, pretty poor officiating. We then had in the same game a challenge for which the player who made the challenge was at most reckless, but in making that challenge, there was a slip, in fairness to the player, and you could see that. He issued a yellow card, VAR came in, and I'm going, no way is this wrong. Go with the yellow, but what happens? He goes to the monitor and he goes with a red card. There was no way that was a red card. So for me, I'll be brutally honest, he's been wrapped up in a controversial decision. He's not had the best performance. He certainly wouldn't be on the books to have a match next week. I would literally be talk me through these decisions, and I don't appreciate your performance, and I'd be that blunt with them. Yeah. Now, but what Howard's done is he's out this weekend, so Howard must think that he made the right calls. But if Howard thinks that, then I worry about Howard Webb.
Yeah, and also the actual state of match officiating in the Premier League. If really Anthony Taylor and Michael Oliver are the two top guys. The other guys are they're miles apart as far as performance. What I'm noticing, and I noticed it particularly in probably the most high-profile game of the weekend, Liverpool and Spurs. I think it's Thomas Bramall, is it? Is that his first name?
Yes.
My goodness, there were fouls on players, and they weren't getting free kicks. And yet there was tipping in the guy on the shoulder who took a dive, and he was getting free kicks.
Yeah.
What are they looking at? And, whose responsibility is it to show them? Or really, do they need to be shown what is a foul and what is not a foul if they've gone through the ranks and up to Premier League level? Or are they scared to get some kind of reaction from the clubs, from the fans? Why are they not making the decisions that need to be made? It's a bit of a rhetorical question, Keith, I know.
No. I want to discuss it because I think it's important. You're making a really valid point. I think if we look at Formula One and a Formula One driver, right? Even though he might have won the previous race 7 days ago, isn't it amazing how they have a practice lap and they reset the car and the referee gets used to the atmosphere and the track and everything that goes? What I'm actually saying is they're preparing not only the machinery, but they're also preparing the driver so that he's going to give an elite performance. When I look at the referees, and we've had this discussion now for several weeks, I can recall having a discussion with the boss of the Premier League who was expressing concern that over one particular weekend, there'd been a major error, one error. And he was right. The referee had made an error, right? There was no influence on me that referee wouldn't be refereeing the following week. I think he took it for granted that given my approach and he'd been in the selection process, that referee wouldn't be officiating next week. Now that might be seen initially as punishment. We're human beings, we make mistakes, but we're in a microscope of a performance as Premier League referees. So part of my duty was to protect them, take them out of the oven so that they don't get overheated and their reputation's not tarnished too much. When it comes to decision-making around free kicks, fouls, you and I have discussed it verbatim, holding, pulling and grappling. And I'm not going to touch on that because we've touched it. But there was one this weekend where Harry Maguire was being held around his waist and he, in retaliation, was trying to push his opponent away. A penalty kick or a free kick had to be awarded. The Premier League almost said, or the spokesman for the PGMOL said, half a dozen to one, six of the other. That's not refereeing. That's like saying, well, he might have crashed the car. I know it's all bent and damaged, but he might not have been driving it. Oh, you're telling me he's driving it? Well, let's let him off. It doesn't matter. It's still drivable. When we come to the basic element of what is a foul, the laws of the game are quite clear.
Yeah.
And we've got 3 bans. We've actually got 4, because the first one is that there is contact in the sport, and there can be that doesn't mean it's a foul. Then we go careless, for which a free kick. Then we go reckless, free kick, yellow card. Excessive force, free kick, red card. Serious foul play, state for a red card. There's got to be excessive force, there's got to be malice, and all that goes in it. I would sit for hours with our referees in discussion, in a room, openly discussing challenges to achieve one recognition of what is a foul, what's not a foul. And these are elite referees who've had 15 years plus of experience. But it was part of the process to keep them sharp and focused, that they understood what a foul was. And you're absolutely spot on, because we know, you and I, that in the laws of the game, we can apply an advantage. But when we do that, we have to signal it in some way. That's either a call or a very clear signal. We don't get signals, we get fouls. We assume that the referee is playing an advantage. We assume that he's playing an advantage, but he's not. He's not seen the foul. And when it comes to refereeing generally, one of the big areas, I've talked about foul challenges that might be waist below. Upper body fouls just are not being punished. There's a total inconsistency. That is about hand and arm position in relation to handball. It's about the deliberate use of the hand and elbow as a weapon. We saw a player push an opponent in his face, right, and not get punished with a red card. And, the manager, I think that was Coventry City, I think manager Frank Lampard, had seen that hand in the face of an opponent going unpunished. He accepted that his player, I think, had been held and had stopped a promising attack. But in doing so, he put his hand in the face of an opponent. And you look and you think, where are we with our officiating? Because I look around, and you and I have time on social media, and there are referees, from, you and I know, from around the world, who are writing me almost on a weekly basis saying, Keith, what is happening? And if we cannot see the decline in refereeing standards at our level, and if we've got a benchmark, and Howard Webb believes that Michael Oliver and Anthony Taylor are world-class referees. Remember, they're going to the World Cup for a second time. They are world-class referees. I think Taylor's refereeing really relaxed now, and he's actually handling games quite well. Yeah. If they're the guys that are at the top of the list, then surely they're the benchmark that the others have to aim for. But I think he's got lots of referees who are mediocre. Didn't ought to be there.
You're watching the Monday Review Show. Thank you for checking in and joining in. We're talking all things referees and refereeing and decisions and sometimes non-decisions. And with me, of course, is former Premier League, former FIFA referee and former head of the PGMOL, Keith Hackett. Keith, how often do the Premier League referees, for example, or even the Championship guy, how often do they meet? And would they and do they discuss all of this, what we have been banging on about now for a couple of weeks, is pushing and shoving in the penalty area, particularly at corner kicks and the like, arms around, I'm not pushing him, but arms around the guy's waist and not allowing him to move one way or the other. Is that actually discussed? And if so, why is nothing being done about it?
Well, certainly I can quote in Philip Don's time, my own, when I was boss of the PGMOL. That's why we brought the referees in on a fortnightly basis, and sometimes, on a weekly basis if we needed to do that. And they would come in, and in the morning they'd do a lot of the physical training. They'd, under the supervision of Professor Matt Weston at the time, and they would do that. They would, test it and various other things. In the afternoon, the sessions would invariably be analysing performance, looking at laws, discussing decisions, and how we can improve. We might have a session with a sports psychologist, a vision scientist, all those sort of things. So we would also look at trends in the game and express concerns. And then my role was to report that back to the board of directors. And if we needed to make some changes that impacted on the game and on clubs, those changes would be communicated to all the managers, both at Premier League and Football League level, and also the media. So there were occasions when I would call in the media, and I can remember one occasion when we were getting concerned about increased acts of simulation, and we showed some film clips to the managers, people like Sir Alex, Benitez, Harry Redknapp, all these people at the time, top world-class managers, and we were explaining the difficulties that we were faced as referees and how they could help with reduction of acts of simulation. Holding, pulling is a cancer in the game, and what I think makes it worse is when they talk about a bar, i.e. sustained pushing. Well, I've looked at the IFAB, and the IFAB on that subject and on holding are quite clear. They issued actually an instruction that basically says holding has to be punished. So the IFAB, the lawmakers, expressed at the beginning of the season their concerns about the increased holding that's taking place. And of course, when it comes to the Premier League, we are the Premier League that is beamed to 211 territories around the world. Other countries, other players, other referees see what's going off, and some set their standards against the Premier League lads. And therefore, for me, if what is happening on a Saturday and not being punished, and then explained incorrectly in law by a Premier League spokesperson, they're doing the game a disservice.
Of course. Because I'm waiting for some referee to really get the backbone to punish this kind of pushing and shoving that goes on in the penalty area. As you and I have discussed, it's either a penalty kick to the attacking team or a free kick to the defending team. But I think I heard a comment from one of the commentators says he had heard the VAR official saying that in simple terms, I can't remember the words that he used, but it was equal pushing and shoving on both players.
That was the man. Yeah, I mean that's the Harry Maguire scenario.
Oh, was that the one?
Yeah, I don't think when we look at the career of the referees that are on the PGMOL, they've gone through the hoops in terms of getting to that level. Years in grassroots football, years nationalist football league. I do not have any concerns about any one of those match officials with regard to lacking in courage. I don't have that problem. What they need is direction and leadership.
And maybe instruction from above to say,
correct.
Why do you punish that pushing and shoving instead of allowing it? I mean, it's becoming so boring now, watching the pushing and shoving. The referee goes in, he talks to one or two players, he steps back. It's a well-worn procedure. And he steps back and they're at it again. And still he does nothing. So what was the point in going in and talking to these players in the first place, because they're going
This
to
is-
resume it
yeah.
all over again.
Well, I think this is why when Howard stands up in front of his referees, he has to dictate policy. He has to be very specific in what he wants. And this is no different to a football manager who says to his number 10 or whatever, this is where I want you to be. And they'll practice set piece free kicks forever. We
Sure.
as referees did the same. We as referees, if you like, and I'm obviously a former referee, we would discuss with those referees what we would do. Now, what also happens is this. One, if you don't do it, there's accountability.
Absolutely.
Right? If the clubs start moaning and the Premier League start moaning, that's Howard Webb's job. That's Howard Webb's job, to go in and sell the action that he's taking. He should demonstrate courage that says, I'm very unhappy with the holding and pulling in our game and the grappling that's taking place. We this summer are going to discuss this verbatim with the referees. We're going to announce to the managers, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do it. And I think that is then Richard Masters, who's the boss of the Premier League, he has to take that on board. But see, at the moment, they're just accepting that the standard of refereeing is okay. There must be.
What are they looking at?
I don't know.
Which matches are they looking at that you and I are not looking at? Because
Well, I think
happy.
I think you've just got to look at the face of managers, and like I'm looking and thinking, when did I last hear a manager praise a referee?
Yeah, he will when they win.
Yeah, well,
lose,
sometimes you don't
so.
even do that. I mean, like you look and you think, why? It's a respect thing, isn't it? I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to respect each other on the field of play. Yeah. But if you give a player in an environment of the Premier League game where they themselves are under pressure, if you give them too much latitude, they will take it.
And even, Keith, where the fourth official is standing, that should be a no-go area. And it is a no-go area because the technical areas are cordoned off, not cordoned off, but demarked, that you cannot come outside the technical area. Yet they're doing it. And they're barricading the fourth official.
Yeah.
It's appalling.
I mean, I think what we've seen with it, I mean, I can remember refereeing football matches at the senior level where it was just the manager and his coach, and they stood up most of the match. They didn't yell abuse at us. It was a working environment. All we've done is created secondary theatre where if the man is not gesticulating and pointing and jumping up and down, they're going to say, well, he's not passionate, is he?
Yeah.
He's not passionate. He's, and you're looking and you're thinking, some of these guys are highly skillful. They're top of the class in terms of, that's why they're paid the millions. But nonetheless, they sit there and, how many times can a manager be fined for negative comments about the match official? And I just think that I just think the working relationship between fourth official and it's not just the manager, it's the coaches as well. I mean, there was a coach caution this weekend for jumping up and expressing his joy. So I just think at the moment, the word I would say is we are lacking in authority in applying the laws of the game to a high standard.
Backbone, Keith.
And that is why that's the role of PGMOL.
Just have one comment here from Gerard O'Brien. Let me see what's going on the screen. There. The problem with pushing, shoving, holding is it's fully accepted by all the players, managers, and pundits. As Keith said, it's looked at as minor issues. It's going to take a referee to award 2 or 3 penalties in a game. I can't see any more pushing, any more putting their heads above the parapet. I think he's right there. I think you're absolutely right, Gerard. It's going to take a referee with some guts some guts to award a penalty. Who's going to be that referee, and will he face repercussions for it?
No, I think it's quite simple. You actually publicly announce that you're going to penalise these offences as of the start of the season, if that's the time.
Didn't Howard Webb do that when he came in and he said that the referees were going to add on the time wasted and so on, and it never happened?
I mean, why I keep saying that there's a lack of leadership and direction is because someone who I've always admired as an individual, as a referee, as someone who I watched train and have had many, many discussions with him. Sadly, I know his capabilities, and I think he's become a spectator and not the manager. He's
and I wonder
the bus,
how much influence
he's not
there
driving
is.
it.
How many people are in his ear? He's what I call these soccer politicians or football politicians who are never referees in their lives, but now they're trying to dictate anything and everything. Keith, we're way over time. Thank you very much once again.
Pleasure.
We'll do it all again next Monday. I'm sure we'll have lots more incidents to discuss. And thank you out there for watching, and particularly Jared for sending in his comments.
Thanks, Jared.
Very much appreciated. And I said I'd give a mention to a young man called Das, who's in Bangladesh and contacted me during the week. So Das, I know you're a regular viewer, and thank you very much for the comments we had during the week. Until next Monday, 8 o'clock, same time, same place. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.